Week 2 in the Canadian Football League is almost upon us, which means it's time to do our picks. I'm John Hodge, joined by JC Abbott. JC, how pumped are you for week number 2?
I'm fired up. We get to see 3 teams in action for the very first time, including a couple of fan favorite contenders. I'm actually digging this early 3-game slate for the CFL. I know a lot of people are critical of it. It's only happening this year because of some of the stadium situations with the FIFA World Cup. But I like having this little taster of these teams slowly dribbling out. It's exciting me, Hodge.
It's wild that it's week 2 and there's only 3 teams playing this week who played last week. Like that is like there's 3 teams who are playing the second time. I will say I was fine with the minimized slate in week 1 until we hit Sunday, and there was no football on Sunday. I felt ripped off. So I'm sick and tired of these 3-game weeks. But fortunately, week 3 is a full slate. I'm excited for that. It'll be a fun time. But let's not worry about week 3 yet. Let's stay in week number 2. Last week, we both went 2-1 straight up and against the spread. When we made this video last week, we thought that the Calgary Stampeders could very well have Falarana Rimilade and also Jalen Hutchings on that defensive line. That didn't end up happening. So just a friendly reminder for folks who listen to this podcast, watch our YouTube video. Over the course of the season with our picks, we don't always have all the information. And in fact, we never will have all the information for all the games just because it's not available for the later games on Saturday and Sunday when we sit down for these. So for that reason, stay tuned to 3downnation.com for all the latest injury news that comes up as it happens, roster shuffling. And of course, sign up for our free newsletter. You can do that right on the homepage of the website. Just pop in your email address and all the latest news, insight, and analysis will come to your inbox for free, and you can cancel anytime. Literally no downside. Sign up, get it all. It'll be great. So we're both looking to improve on our 2-1 records. Let's get into it.
The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are 2.5-point home favorites over the Hamilton Tiger Cats on Thursday night. The Tiger Cats suffered a heartbreaking defeat in week 1, coughing up a double-digit second-half lead and an overtime fumble to lose to Montreal. Bo Levi Mitchell threw for 307 yards, but was unable to find Kenny Lawler on 3 attempted deep shots and tossed a costly pick 6 to Robert Kennedy III. The season started well for Winnipeg with a win against Calgary as their defense clamped down for most of the second half and the offense set up a walk-off field goal from Sergio Castillo. The Blue Bombers dominated the most recent matchup between these two teams, which Hamilton hasn't forgotten. Wynton McManus will not play due to a nagging injury. Hodge, who will win this one at Princess Auto Stadium?
I've got the Blue Bombers. And look, I almost took the Blue Bombers last week. I didn't with the injuries that Calgary was supposedly getting back and then didn't end up getting back on the defensive line. But I liked what I saw from this team in week 1. There was concerns with Tommy Condell, the team's new offensive coordinator, historically being a pass-first guy, that they weren't going to run the ball well. Well, with Tyler Ellsbury at center, with Jarrell Broxton at right tackle, I thought the Bombers' offensive line did a great job of controlling that line of scrimmage. I thought Brady Oliveira looked great. He ripped off 113 yards and a touchdown off just 15 carries. And in the passing game, I mean, Zach Collaros can't throw those 50, 60-yard deep shots consistently anymore, at least in my opinion. But he did a great job, I thought, orchestrating that Tommy Condell offense with all those comeback routes. Ontario Wilson looked really good. Tim White looked really good. And Tommy Neild, I thought, looked really good. Once Nick Dembski is going, he was, by the way, questionable for this one. He is going to play and start. I think this offense could be really good. Defensively, I thought that the pressure that got home was the difference from last season. Last year, we did not see a consistent pressure from this group. I thought they got their lunch eaten by Calgary's defensive line in the first half. They made those halftime adjustments, and Dedrick Mills, who killed them in the first half, did nothing in the second half. And the Bombers are great on special teams. In my opinion, the best special teams group across the board in the league. Now, I still think the Ticats are a good football team. Bo Levi Mitchell got goaded into a few deep shots to Kenny Lawler in week 1 that were simply not there. I think he needs to be smarter about when he takes those shots. He threw into double, triple coverage a few times, didn't connect on those. He also, of course, had the pick 6. Other than that, though, he was perfect, JC. He completed over 80% of his passes in week 1. You got to like that. I have some questions, though, about the offensive line. Liam Dobson has moved from guard to center, and Nathaniel Demelin-Duguay, former first-round pick out of Laval, but a guy who hasn't started very many games, will be in at guard. Larry Roundtree could not run the ball last week. There was not a lot of room for him to operate, and I have questions if the Tiger Cats will be able to run the ball in Winnipeg, especially, which is very important when you're dealing with that unbelievably loud crowd that's going to be packing Princess Auto Stadium. So I don't think this is going to be a blowout like last year's game was, but for the reasons I've listed, I do have the Blue Bombers winning, and I do have them covering a relatively short spread. I'm very happy to get the Bombers -2.5 here. To me, I would be willing to take them up to -4, maybe even -5. So I purposely like getting this line at less than a field goal. I'm rolling with the home side.
I'm on the same page as you, Hodge, and it's not because I don't like the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I thought there were some really positive things from that game last week, despite the mistakes. I had them picked entering the season to win the East Division and go to the Grey Cup. I'm still fairly confident in that prediction at this stage. I think they can get to that level. But there are some flaws in this matchup against Winnipeg, right? You mentioned Nathaniel Dumoulin-Duguay is getting the start at guard. He gets to match up against Jake Serezda. That is not a friendly welcome to the starting lineup type of matchup. I expect there to be some challenges there. Defensively, they're going to get a little bit better in that linebacking core with the return of Braxton Hill from injury. I think that's a positive step. But really, they didn't get challenged on the ground at all by Montreal's rushing attack because, well, Stevie Scott III got injured in practice and Travis Tice was hurt early in that football game. That's going to be a different story against Brady Oliveira, who will pound that football and we know can be one of the most dangerous backs in the CFL. But the most important factor in why I'm picking the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to win this game and cover the spread, where is this game being played, Hodge?
It's in Winnipeg, baby.
It's in Winnipeg, and the Bombers, they don't lose very often in Winnipeg. That is a raucous environment. I believe they're still marching towards that sellout territory. It's not quite there yet, but even if it's just short of that goal, this is still the most hostile environment to play in the CFL right now. I think that's going to give the Bombers a huge boost, and they'll come out on top.
The Montreal Alouettes are 6.5-point home favorites over the Toronto Argonauts on Friday night. The Boatmen are coming off a week 1 bye and are looking to start strong after a disappointing 2025 campaign. Chad Kelly will make his return to the field after missing all of last season due to a leg fracture, while Dakota Shepley is expected to make his Toronto debut after signing with the team following a long stint in the NFL. Montreal shook off the rust from a poor preseason to beat the Tiger Cats in week 1 as Davis Alexander threw for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns. It appears the team will be without some key pieces in Stevie Scott III, Cole Speaker, and Justin Lawrence, though odds makers have still made the Alouettes the heavy favorites. Will the Owls improve to 2-0, or can the Toronto get the upset?
The Montreal Alouettes are the better football team on paper right now, and I think they showed last week that despite some early struggles, when they are on, they are as dangerous as any team in the CFL. Some of the throws that Davis Alexander made to Tyler Snead, otherworldly. Tyson Philpott's catch, unbelievable. They can make plays on offense. Now, there are some causes for concern here with the Alouettes on the injury report. You mentioned a couple there. The backfield's still not settled. But also, on Tuesday, Tyrese Beverette didn't practice. Now, does that mean he's not going to play in this game? Not necessarily. We don't have any information on that. But if he's limited in any way, I think that is the biggest component to their defense, and I would argue the biggest defensive playmaker in the entire CFL. So that is something to monitor, but I am still confident in picking the Montreal Alouettes to win this game because I just don't know what the Toronto Argonauts are going to be. I don't know what Chad Kelly is going to look like returning to the same field where he broke his leg after a full year away from football. There were some promising signs in the preseason, but until the real bullets start flying, I don't have confidence in believing he's going to be a top flight quarterback in the CFL again. He has to prove it. We don't know what these new additions and newcomers are going to look like for the Argos because they haven't played. And I think there's some concern, or at least I had some concern during the course of the offseason, that they didn't add enough pieces at certain places, particularly along the defensive line off the edge. I think there's some questions in their secondary as well. Like, this team has to show massive improvement, and right now they are too much of a question for me. This spread is too large. I'm not going to pick the Montreal Alouettes to cover because, again, there are questions on both sides, but I will take the Alouettes to win by less than 6.5.
Yeah, Chad Kelly is a phenomenally talented player, right? We know this. And I know there are some CFL fans who despise Chad Kelly as a person enough that they will deny that that's true. And that is their right. That's their prerogative. For me, I'm not talking about Chad Kelly, the person. This is a football player. As a football player, there's a reason he was an NFL draft pick. There's a reason he was a starter at 2 different top collegiate programs. There's a reason he was MOP back in 2023. He's an excellent player. That said, I've asked a few people around the league, what do you expect to see from a guy who's only played half a season of football over the last 2 calendar years? And the answer was, yeah, he's probably going to be rusty. Now we'll have to wait and see when the proof is in the pudding how he actually looks. But if you are rusty and you're playing one of the top defenses in the CFL, a defense that took all the deep shots away from the Hamilton Tiger Cats this past week and really forced them to make hay underneath, I don't like your chances of keeping this game within 7 points. And there are areas where the Argonauts, I think, have really improved personnel-wise. I think the interior of the offensive line is better with the addition of Dakota Shepley. I think the receiving core is actually quietly very good. Jake Hirschlow is a little bit banged up right now, but DeMonte Coxie is healthy. He missed the last part of last year. And Kevin Mattel, I think, even has another level he hasn't yet found. I'm a card-carrying member of the Kevin Mattel fan club. He could be a 1,200-yard guy, in my opinion, this season. I think he's that good. And defensively, the secondary should be way better. Deshaun Amos is back. Robert Priester is back. Adarius Pickett is back. Those are all big upgrades to a unit that struggled last year. But I'm not sure if this team has enough off the edge to rush defensively. And I've still got questions about the 2 tackle spots on the offensive line. If you are not good at those tackle spots and Chad Kelly is rusty, that is a bad equation to having early success. And I actually think, JC, getting to play week 1 and then play a team in week 2 that was on bye week 1 is a big advantage. Generally, we think of bye weeks as being an advantage for the rested team. I don't think that's the case at all in week 2. The Alouettes looked awful in the preseason. They shook off a lot of that rust, it looked like, in week 1. I think they could hit week 2 like a Ferrari, whereas the Toronto Argonauts still have to, by no fault of their own, it's just a scheduling quirk, have to get out of the blocks. So it's a 6.5-point line, longest line of the season by quite a few points, but I'm willing to eat those points. I wouldn't want to go into double digits for this one. I don't think it's going to be a 30-point blowout, but I do think the Montreal Alouettes will be able to cover this spread. I see them winning this game by somewhere between 10 and 14 points to get the minus 6.5. I'm pretty pleased with that. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are 1.5-point home favorites over the BC Lions on Saturday. These teams were both idle in week 1 and must be champing at the bit to see the field for the first time in 2026. It is kind of wild to me that most CFL teams, or at least a lot of them, will have played 2 games before Saskatchewan and BC even hit the field. The Lions came close to knocking off the Riders in the West Final in 2025, but Trevor Harris hit Tommy Neild for the game-winning touchdown with 11 seconds remaining. BC's roster remained mostly intact this offseason, though veterans Casey Sales and Darnell Sankey were added to shore up the front of the defense. In Saskatchewan, the team lost several key starters along the defensive line and will be looking to James Vaughters to provide some of the pass rush previously provided by Malik Carney and Habakkuk Baldonado. JC, which of these West Division powerhouses will get the W?
I've got the Saskatchewan Roughriders prevailing in this matchup. You mentioned when talking about Toronto that sometimes that week one bye isn't exactly an advantage. And in this case, it should theoretically be a wash because both of these teams did not play last week. But I think when you consider the circumstances of this game and the emotions that will be at play, the Lions are going to have a much more difficult time coming off that bye than maybe the Riders will. This is going to be in Saskatchewan. It is the first game there since they won the Grey Cup. That banner is going to go up. I think that team is going to be fired up as a result, and that stadium, which is still very difficult to play in, is going to be fired up as well. That's not a great place to be when you're still working out the kinks in that initial first game. I think the Lions are going to be improved this season. I think they will overtake the Riders as the top team in the West, who are still very good, but lost too many pieces over the course of this offseason to stay on top. But in this particular matchup, in these circumstances, with the emotions at play for Saskatchewan coming off the bye for that first game, I think it's going to be the Riders who prevail in a very tightly contested football game, but with a spread that is this tight, I will still take them to cover at 1.5 points.
This is where we differ, JC. I'm on the BC Lions for this one, and I think this is going to be a dogfight. I think it's a last possession type of game. Honestly, I'd almost call it a coin flip. I do get 1.5 points with the Lions, which I like. Not that that's a lot, but I think that Nathan Rourke is the best player in the Canadian Football League. I think that BC's offensive line, which was a little bit of a question mark given the loss of Jarrell Broxton at left tackle, an all-CFL player, was a little concerning. But with the losses the Riders have had on their defensive line, I do think that that potentially sets the Lions up to have a good start in that area. And we know their receiving core is great. We know James Butler is electric out of the backfield. I think this offense is going to be able to move the ball consistently. And I think without that pass rush, the Riders are going to see a little more pressure on that secondary. Yes, Roland Milligan is great. Yes, we know that Marcus Sales is great. We know Tavon Campbell is great. There's a bunch of brilliant players on the back end for those Saskatchewan Roughriders, but it is tougher to cover all of that space when you just don't have as strong of a pass rush in front of you. And then on the other side of the ball, I love the Riders' run game, but with Darnell Sankey, Casey Sales beefing up the front six of that BC Lions defense, I think they're going to be able to mitigate that a little better than they were in that West Final when I thought they got their lunch eaten a little bit at the line of scrimmage. And I think their secondary is ultimately where their questions will need to be answered. They're really old on the boundary side with Gary Peters and TJ Lee, and they're young on the field side, unproven, where they lost Robert Carter Jr. to the NFL. So that to me is the big question mark. If Trevor Harris, with all the weapons, we know the Riders have a great receiving core, Samuel Emelis, Kean Schaefer-Baker, Keyshawn Johnson, all guys who missed time last year, they're all healthy right now. I think that will be the ultimate test. If the BC Lions allowed Trevor Harris to go out there and throw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, the Riders are starting 1-0. But I think with BC's pass rush being as good as it is, with Matt Jubetz, obviously, I think, and by the way, my pick, Levi Bell for Breakout Player of the Year, I think he's going to be great. On the other side, Jonah Tavai is great. Casey Sales is there. That, to me, will help mitigate that. So again, this is about a coin flip as you can get in professional sports, but I will err on the side of the visitors, spoiling the banner raising in Regina. But regardless of who you like in this one, JC, To me, this is the game of the week. If you're only going to watch one CFL game this weekend, make sure it's Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And once you're done that, check out 3downnation.com for all the latest news, insight, and analysis from these three contests. And let's also look forward to week 3 when we actually get a full slate of 4 games. For JC Abbott, I'm John Hodge. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the games.